I try to look at people, and I can see when people are stressed after many years. And I really just try to sit them down and show them their room and make them a tea or coffee or a glass of wine, whatever they need, and just talk for maybe half an hour before they start the journey into my house.
This is one of a series of talks hosted between Monocle and Genesis. Today we're going to be talking about hospitality, something that when it works is absolutely magical. It can take a place that we've never been to before in the world and turn it into a springboard for new ideas, for new experiences, and actually just making us feel a little bit better. We'll be having this conversation for the next 25 minutes. I've got this host of magical guests because the people we've gathered today are very good at creating hospitality in three ways: a sense of space in terms of the physical space that they create, in terms of the mental space that they create, and also in terms of that all too precious commodity that we need so much more of, which is time. So we'll be talking about that, and these people are magicians in that art. They take material, no, just not making you scared or like buzzing.
No pressure.
No pressure for you guys, but you solve all our problems, don't you, when it comes to hospitality. Beautiful materials, beautiful space, a bit of courage, and also just a little bit of a smile to make it a nice event. We'll crack on with that in just a moment, and we'll have prizes as well for questions, because this is a Monocle event, and we do prizes quite well. So think, during the next 20 minutes, of some questions that you'd quite like to ask our very game panel, and there will be goodies available at the end for the best questions. So it will be, the prize will be awarded by our editorial director, Tyler, who will, so no pressure for you to choose. Before we begin, I think it's only right that we should introduce someone from Genesis. So I'm delighted to say that Irene Frankhoff, who's the head of PR for Genesis Motor Switzerland, is here to talk to us about why we're here today. And also, this was a yoga studio yesterday, Irene.
Yes, this is correct. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Genesis Studio Zurich. It is really a great pleasure to host you tonight as our Sonnim, as Emma mentioned just before. Sonnim is Korean for honorable guest. So we would like to have everybody coming to the Genesis Studio to feel like an honorable guest. Hospitality and unusual spaces, I think this is us. We've started our journey in Europe with Genesis 2 years ago, with studios in Munich, in London, Westfield, in Zurich. It was 2021. A very special year for all of us. It was also the year when we started the collaboration with Monocle, and we've had some nice talks in the past in München, in London. We're going to have soon a talk also in Geneva, and it is really a great pleasure for us. Hospitality is actually what we do. It's what we breathe, is what we offer our clients. Yes, we are a car brand, but it's really not about the car. We want our guests really to feel at ease. We have personal assistants or concierges taking care after the cars of our clients. This is also a very unusual space. It used to be a toy store for 150 years. It was Franz Karl Weber, and today it's a studio. We've opened 3 new studios in Basel, in Geneva just a couple of months ago, and we will soon open a new studio in Edinburgh, which is about 5 days from here. But hospitality, as Emma mentioned, we had a yoga class yesterday. You're the very first guest tonight who will experience a world premiere. We have, yes, thank you for that. We are very delighted to have a collaboration with T Collective. Her founder and her team, Mijai Kim, is here with us tonight. So the past 2 days, she has been entertaining our lifestyle media guests and some influencers with a very nice tea masterclass, where she introduced our bespoke Genesis tea. It is a global project. We care so much about our client that we even have a global tea development team, which is sitting in Seoul and which is also with us here tonight, who take care of all our retail spaces across the globe. They have created a bespoke Genesis tea, which you will be able to sample tonight as a very first guest across Europe. So I think this is a premiere. And Mijai and her team, they will be there to tell you all about it. They will be there to take you to the tea ceremony and maybe tell you what we have been doing the past 2 days to take care of the well-being of our clients. But sorry for the long airtime. I'm really pleased to have you tonight. I hope you enjoy this evening, and I pass on to Emma.
Thank you so much, Irene. There's a cup of tea waiting for us at the end of all this. What a gorgeous idea. Let's talk to our panel now. I'm delighted to welcome on stage Ruth Kramer, the designer and innkeeper. Ruth moved from Denmark, is that correct? 20
correct.
years ago, and went to the village of Vals. And when you arrived there, you said that your inner Heidi woke.
That is true.
Absolutely true. So instead of doing nothing about it, Ruth bought a house and converted into a sort of a sublime pension and creative space called Brücke 49. And it's a combination of a sort of beautiful Scandinavian design and that brilliant Swiss practicality that we all know and love. Ruth says that nature is the only trend that follows and less is better. Welcome, Ruth. Lovely to have you with us.
Thank you.
To my right, I have Thomas Hildebrand, the architect. Thomas has lived and worked in England, the Netherlands, Germany, and the United States before opening a practice in Zurich in 1999. Is that correct?
That's correct.
His office has won international awards everywhere. And he says that at the heart of his practice, you want people to feel at ease and protected and inspired.
That's correct.
Wonderful. Looking forward to talking to you,
Thank
Thomas.
you.
Welcome. Finally, may I introduce you to Agneta Saratz, who's an ear, nose and throat surgeon in Oerlikon. Agneta has worked on creating spaces at her clinic, which you're going to talk to us about, which welcome your patients using art and books as a means of making people feel at ease. You're also known for your hospitality and an ability to drag an enormous table from the dining room into the back garden where she entertains people like no other can. Though I do warn you, if you stay still long enough, Agneta will try and make you go for a swim with her tomorrow morning.
At 7.
At 7. It's not any kind of swim, is it, Agneta?
No,
What
it'll
do
be
you do?
1.6 kilometers, so that might be a prize for Monocle if you ask the best questions.
Yeah.
To join me, 1.6 kilometers at 7.
And you do it in a mere 42 minutes?
Yes.
Okay.
But I do it easy style, no crawling, just...
All right. We'll be needing that tea. Let's talk about hospitality. So there was a poster that the French Tourism Board put out in the 1960s, and the strapline was "Accueillir, c'est sourire." The secret, a welcome, the secret of a welcome can be as simple as a smile. It's not that easy, is it? But it does go really to the heart, Ruth, of what hospitality is all about, isn't it? That effortlessness.
I think you're right. I think that first connection, that people really feel that you care for them, I think that is super important, and that you stand in the door and you have no hurry and you don't make a lot of rituals in checking people in and filling out papers, that you just think, oh, friends are coming. How nice. I want to share my place with them. So yes, I think you're right.
And what did you do at Brücke 49 to make sure that was what happened to people?
I try to look at people, and I can see when people are stressed after many years. And I really just try to sit them down and show them their room and make them a tea or coffee or a glass of wine, whatever they need, and just talk for maybe half an hour before they start the journey into my house.
It sounds like a kind of therapy, doesn't it? But let's talk about the practical spaces. I mean, in the way that you design, Thomas, there will be some pictures that we'll be able to see a little bit later upstairs of both Thomas and Ruth's projects. But creating that space physically isn't that easy, is it? So what have you got to hand to make that hospitality just sort of happen?
Well, the entrance is really important. And I'm often a guest at Ruth in Vals, and we sometimes stay in the Herberge on the top apartment, and I really love this entrance. And there's a few things, the materiality. Of course, it's an old building, so it has the history, it has the patina, but there are also small things, like there's some, what are they called, when, the things that hang when you're supposed to kiss somebody underneath it?
Yeah, mistletoe.
Mistletoe, or you have the rack for the
But we don't kiss our customers. No. We don't do that. But maybe I should try.
It's the entrance, which has to do with materiality, which has to do with care. yeah.
So talk about the materials that you use. Not every building can have a mistletoe hook in it.
No.
Although
No.
this is an idea that we could all introduce in our homes. I don't think anything bad could come of it. Yeah. But when you are designing your buildings and you design homes and you design, goodness knows what, offices, spaces for people to live in and to feel at home in, what do you have to think of, such as things like scale or what materials you're going to use? And give us a couple of examples of where you've had to really think about making hospitality absolutely an intuitive thing inside your building.
Well, of course, there's scale, so there's a sequence of rooms that you think of, kind of a choreography. But the best spaces are the spaces that touch all senses, you know, that the light is right, the materiality is nice to touch, the view is choreographed into the landscape, ideally. Craftsmanship, you know, where you can feel somebody has actually worked on materials and transformed them. I think that's something I love to work on.
There was, when we were having a conversation before we came on stage, you got very excited about a bathroom that you once designed, which had a hinoki wood bathtub. I mean, that is an incredible attention to detail, isn't it? I mean, the thought processes of when a client comes to you and says, I want a perfect retreat, what do you then think about?
Well, you know, that bathroom, actually, Yuichi, somewhere in the, you know, we did this together. Back there is Yuichi. Yeah, he's my Japanese friend who we designed this thing together. And but that bathroom is a completely interiorized space. So it's not a space where you leave the world outside, where you come in, where it's a kind of a ritual that you do daily. So it's kind of has a meditative aspect, but of course the wood smells beautifully. The hinoki, you know, the water kind of when you empty it, it flows over the stones underneath it. So there's a whole sort of ritual aspect, sensual aspect that goes with that. But it's a completely one-to-one body, you know, space. Scale, which is entirely different than a public space, for example.
And when you were pulling together Brücke 49, which you worked on together?
No,
there's anher project you've worked on.
Another project.
We have worked on other hotels
Forgive
together.
me, there's a lot of projects.
Yes.
And they're all glorious. When you're making Brücke 49, it's a remote spot, and it's very, very connected with nature, isn't it?
I think when we did it, we didn't know what we did. I just wanted to meet people, and I wanted to entertain, and this house was there. And it was a ruin, and we did it in a style I call Scandi-Swiss, because the house is Swiss, and I've lived in Denmark all my life. And we decided that if our concept didn't work, and our concept was all about having traveled all over the world and meeting all these fake rituals about taking care of people and saying welcome, but you can see in people's eyes they don't mean it. So we wanted to simply make a home away from home for guests from all over. And in Brücke, you share things. You sit together at the breakfast table. You even share bathrooms, which is so uncommon. But I loved it because
you don't share a bath.
I was on Interrail. Yeah, and
you take turns.
Yeah, of course, not everybody is there at the same time. But there are many places where you meet each other and share, and it ends up that guests get friends. And it's easy to be a host if everybody gets friends. Then I can just make good bread and good marmalade.
You make it sound so simple. Agneta, we have two guests here who work in hospitality on a professional scale, planning, preparing, building. There is that other side to it all as well, which is the creation of a beautiful, temporary, domestic space where you still get to meet people like this, but it's absolutely on your own terms, and it's up to you if you want to drag the table into the garden. I mean, just tell us a little bit about what for you is a real priority when it comes to being a good host.
Well, I think if you think about the definition of curating something or being a curator, it's kind of like a person who takes care of someone's soul. And I think in our daily life nowadays, everyone's so on fast track and the speed, everyone's reachable. We're all like on social media, hustling, bustling. We're not really taking our surroundings anymore real. And I always say it's important to like take a step back, take a breather, disconnect. I have a lot of patients who have a ringing sensation, a tinnitus, as you know, in German, and a lot is due to stress. And I'm just like, I coach them, even though I'm an ENT doctor, I have the psychological aspect. So even in the professional sense, as in the private sense, I try to do little oases. And for example, we have a beautiful garden with a cherry tree and little ponds. And I was like to my husband, oh, we're going to host a dinner, and you know, we don't have the perfect table yet, so we're going to just take our living room table and haul it out. And he had just broken his shoulder and was helping me carry out this huge, massive wooden table. And it was just such a beautiful setting with like the candles and the pond and just the surrounding of the cherry tree. And everyone who was at this dinner just kind of said, it's like a little vacation that we just had here. And it just helped me kind of de-stress from my hectic day at work today. So I think that's, yeah.
And staying with you in the idea of hospitality, that when you're in your clinic, you can't drag the table out, you can't have twinkly lights. You have to create a different kind of hospitality, don't you?
Yes.
And the people who are coming to you aren't coming there for necessarily because they're in pain, aren't they? And you are there. So how have you created in your clinic a sense where people can feel at ease, where they can feel trust, and they can feel as if something good is going to come at the end of their visit?
So I think it's kind of, if you think about hospitals, clinics, they're always like, oh, it's white, it's sterile, neon lights. And took over this practice and everything was so empty. And I thought, okay, I'm going to curate a little space with like painting the walls, supporting a local photographer here from Zurich that I really appreciate, putting some plants and art books into the waiting room. Because studies have shown like nature, art is very calming, it improves the quality of your life, it helps you to de-stress. And again, patients with tinnitus or vertigo symptoms, if they have like a comforting space, not these bright lights, white, they feel at ease and it's already quite therapeutic. Kind of they just come from there.
And tell me, how many of these people who come in spend their time looking at the art and reading the books?
So when I was creating this space, I was walking by the waiting room several times back and forth, always like glancing at my patients, and they were mostly on their iPhone or gaming and something like that. And I was like, I'm gonna like ask a regular, you know, like when she comes, I'm cleaning her ears and like, so have you noticed the waiting room? And she's like, yeah, you have a great selection of magazines. And I was like, what? I have so amazing art books and architecture books and they're not reading it. She's like, yeah, after the consultation, can I go back and finish my article? I'm like, yes, of course, do that. But she didn't touch the art books. But 2 days ago, I had an 88-year-old patient. He took an architecture book from Francis Carré, an African architect, and he was looking through it. So I was like, when I'm cleaning his ears, I'm going to strike up a conversation again with him. Like, and he's like, yeah, I'm a bow engineer, like a mechanical engineer. And he really loved that I had this book in the waiting room, and I was like, yes, at least one patient who appreciated the effort. So
next time you go and see Agneta in her clinic, for whatever reason,
look
at the books. I think that's the instruction. I mean, Thomas, when you're designing professional spaces, how often do you have clients who maybe forget that need to design a place that gives you mental space? And for example, if you go into certain places nowadays, there's nowhere for staff to go and sit or to talk or to have lunch. It's all desk, 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 in, out, floor to ceiling, glass, off you go. And is this something that we need to pay a little bit more attention to?
Absolutely. Also because, things become much more fluid. For example, office spaces are not, rows of desks anymore because, it works differently. You go there to meet people. It works like a club, basically, an office. You have a community. You might be traveling or be, in the home office. When you go to the office, you want to get things done, you communicate. So actually the desks is one part, but then you have to have different spaces of different sizes that are flexible, where you can do other stuff, where you can work as a group and do collaborations.
So you create hospitality as a professional space.
And it's, it needs... Well, we try a lot in our own office. We experiment by moving things, by putting curtains up, by, whatever. So we kind of use our office like a lab and experiment on that. And it's very interesting. It's really completely changing.
Really, what would you suggest if we all had to rush home and rearrange our living rooms this evening? What do you want us to do? Put curtains up, new sofa?
When you want to rearrange the living room?
Yeah.
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay. Okay.
That's Ruth's department.
So Ruth.
Because she's also an interior architect.
There is that balance that you have to strike, isn't there, when you are a host and you're dealing with hospitality, which is when to talk to people, when to leave them be, when to allow them to just relax, isn't there? I mean, you spoke a moment ago about that 30-minute conversation that you have with them, but as a host, when it comes to striking that perfect balance of hospitality, is it entirely intuitive when you say, I need to leave them alone, they look like they want to talk to me?
Yes, I must say, because I think if you want too much too quick, you spoil it. I think you have to be patient. You can save a morning sometimes by just showing yourself as a human person and being a little bit laughable or a little bit stupid or saying something which is out of tune. But I never play it. Sometimes there are just these mornings where nobody talks, and then nobody talks. And I will not be the clown and dancing on the table, because then the mood is like that. But what I experience is when people come, they have a lot of plans and they want to see this and they want to do this and this and this. And it ends up, they just stay in bed, they come down late and they sit at the breakfast table for 2 hours. And that makes me happy, because I don't think I have to entertain. I think the entertainment should flow by itself, as long as I make a setting which is pretty. And we do that in our team. We put a lot of effort in dressing the table and picking flowers and making our own bread in the morning so you can smell it throughout the whole house. So people, they come down and say, oh, it smells so well here.
And that introduces the idea of how you spend your time, which is the one thing that I think that we all want a little bit more of. When people arrive at your doorstep, a little bit like that, with the travel and the worries of the world, how long does it take them for the shoulders to drop, for the hands to loosen, and for the smiles to come?
I would see as soon as they have walked up. It's very difficult to talk about your own place, because now I read people's feeling and I allow myself an opinion on how they feel. So forgive me for that, please. But I feel as soon as they have seen their bed, they get happy. Because they really miss their bed. A lot of people just miss to sleep. Maybe they have kids, maybe they're stressed. And if you see a white bed with nice linen, I think they get quite happy.
And people, do they come with lots of plans? I'm going to walk up here, I'm going to do this?
Yes, but it ends often totally different. I have just had guests from Denmark, and they ended up sitting at the yoga deck the whole day and just looking over the village and eating bread and sleeping. So I love it. Okay. So that's perfect.
You can talk to Ruth later about reserving a room in her lovely space. And this also ties into the idea of that 1.6 kilometers that you do, which is that you really are regretting this. That fact that you can say from 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, that time is mine and I can choose to do what I want with it.
I think anybody who has kids, a stressful job, can probably relate that it's very important to have like a little morning ritual or some me time. And I think I have to admit, I'm only a summer swimmer, 1.6 kilometers, not like at 6 degrees back and forth. That I do not do. But it's really just like the ritual of being there at Utoke at 7 o'clock, going into the water, and then having a challenge, but something like you're somewhere completely in this beautiful surrounding of the Zurich Lake. You have the mountains, you have the silence, the serenity, and you just hear like the water of the movement of you swimming. And you go to Enge, you touch the little flows, the little island, and then you just swim back, and then suddenly you have the sunshine in your face, and you're just like, wow, how life can't be better in this moment. You're just like in this happiness, serene place, and yeah, I think just grateful.
Do you find a lot of your patients are in a rush to get better, that they don't give themselves that time, they don't host their own body a little bit more and want to heal?
Yes. They're always like, oh, I have a ringing sensation since 24 hours. It needs to be gone by tomorrow, or like within the next hour. That I have a lot. But that's where I try to tell them kind of like the psychological aspect of it, trying to coach them what they can do as coping mechanisms to kind of learn the patience, and that healing is a process and it needs its time. And if you let go and let this healing process take place, then mostly it happens quicker than if you stress the time.
So thank you so much. And thank you as well to Irene Franco for being such a brilliant host. Thank you, Genesis, for hosting us. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.